Why did 5 rifles suddenly aim at the quiet woman who checked everyone's weapons every morning? The bark of orders shattered the stillness at Fort Bragg's firing range. Get on your knees now. The voice was sharp, heavy with authority and suspicion. Rachel Cross didn't flinch. She stood motionless beside the line of shooting stalls, a clipboard in her hand, the smell of gun oil in the air. The metallic click of safeties disengaging followed. 5 M4 rifles pointed at her chest. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the attack dogs barked, a frenzy of sound tearing through the morning calm. Sergeant Hayes, broad, built like the bunker wall behind him, lunged forward. The cold bite of handcuffs closed around Rachel's wrists. Metal-cut skin. She didn't resist. Rachel Cross, you're under arrest for impersonating a Navy SEAL and theft of classified intelligence. A few Delta operators nearby froze mid-conversation, staring in disbelief. What the hell, she's just a range officer, someone muttered. Shut up, Hayes snapped. She's a national security threat. Rachel's cheek hit the concrete as Hayes pressed a knee into her back. The taste of blood spread across her tongue. Around her, boots shuffled, whispers rippled through the air. The woman they'd seen for years, the one who checked their weapons, cleaned the targets, and stayed out of the spotlight, was being treated like a traitor. But her eyes didn't match the scene. Cold, steady, calculating. Even now, she was memorizing faces, scanning positions, tracking movement. And when her gaze stopped at the far corner of the range on Colonel Marcus Webb, watching from the shadows, her hand shifted slightly, forming a tiny, quick signal. Thumb and forefinger made the shape of a 13. Then it disappeared. No one noticed, but it meant something none of them were ready for. Just hours earlier, the morning had been routine. 5:45 hours, Rachel Cross unlocked the range gate. Her movements were methodical, deliberate. Every latch checked twice, every weapon inspected with surgeon-like care. On paper, she was just a safety officer. Her job, maintain rifles, replace targets, enforce safety protocols. But those who paid attention noticed things. The way she handled weapons with quiet reverence. How her eyes tracked exits the moment she entered a room. The way her phone always sat at a perfect 45-degree angle, its reflection revealing anyone who approached from behind. And how she never, ever sat with her back to a door. She wasn't paranoid, she was practiced. Her right hand trembled slightly as she lifted an M4 from the rack. Old nerve damage, the kind that came from years of recoil, not office work. She shifted the weapon to her left hand without thinking. Smooth, efficient. Rough night. Jake, a young range worker, smiled as he poured coffee into a paper cup beside her. Something like that. Rachel's answer was calm, but her eyes told a different story. They looked older than her face, eyes that had seen things and never truly come home. At 6:10, Captain Brooks arrived, perfect uniform, perfect hair, perfectly disdainful. She gave Rachel a quick glance. Safety officers, she muttered under her breath to a lieutenant, glorified janitors with clipboards. Rachel said nothing. She'd been called worse. She'd survived worse. Moments later, Lieutenant Park, a cyber specialist, scanned Rachel's badge. Routine check, he said, frowning when the scanner beeped twice. Systems glitching again, he muttered, but his tone wasn't casual. Rachel nodded politely and walked on, aware of the suspicion in his eyes. Corporal Williams, all 220 pounds of arrogance, shoulder-checked her as he passed. Oops, he grinned. Didn't see you there, safety girl. Her body barely moved from the impact. She just looked at him once, not with anger, but with that unsettling calm that made men like him suddenly remember how mortal they were. Her smartwatch glowed faintly, 55 beats per minute. Her heart was steady, almost unnaturally so. The range filled with noise and swagger when the Delta team arrived. "Yo, safety girl," Sergeant Davis called out. "Set up lane 7, we don't have all day." Rachel nodded once. Her hands moved in a blur, assembling the target system in 47 seconds flat. The range record was 2 minutes. Davis raised an eyebrow. Guess you do this a lot." Rachel's expression didn't change. "Every day." She turned away, ignoring the chuckles. Williams grinned, tipped over her bin of ammunition, scattering 200 rounds across the concrete. "Oops again." Rachel knelt silently. One by one, she picked up each round, sorting by caliber without looking. Her fingers moved like memory itself. 90 seconds later, everything was in place again. A low whistle came from Park at the computer terminal. "No one sorts mixed ammo that fast," he muttered, "not without looking." Rachel stood, dusted off her hands, and kept working. "Some people play piano," she said quietly. "I practice this." But Park wasn't listening anymore. His screen had just blinked, a small anomaly in the security system. Her ID badge had pinged a hidden channel encryption far beyond base-level security. When Colonel Webb entered the range, the atmosphere shifted. 6'3", silver-threaded hair, the kind of man who carried authority like a weapon. Rachel went still the moment she saw him. Not out of fear, but recognition. Webb's gaze swept across the range, pausing on her for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something, familiarity, calculation, before his face hardened again. "Gentlemen," he called out, "close quarters battle drills today. I want speed, violence of action, and perfect target discrimination." He positioned himself deliberately to her right, her blind side, a small test. He wanted to see if she'd compensate. She did, effortlessly. Webb noticed. Rachel's phone buzzed once in her pocket. She glanced down. A message, encrypted, military grade, just one line. "Package arriving today." She deleted it immediately. But Park had already seen the data spike on his monitor. "Sir," he whispered over comms. "Subject, receiving encrypted traffic. Military raw encryption, not base level." Webb didn't answer right away. He just kept watching Rachel. By 700, rumors had spread. The quiet safety officer with the two steady hands and perfect shooting form. There was something off about her. Miguel, the old janitor, approached her during a break. "Careful today, Mika," he said softly. "Too many brass, too many eyes." Rachel gave him a faint smile. "I'm always careful." But the way she said it made the old man's eyes darken. He'd seen that kind of careful before, the kind that came from surviving things you never talk about. When she reached up to store a box on a high shelf, her jacket lifted slightly. Brooks saw the scars along her ribs, thin, surgical, deliberate. "What happened to you?" Brooks asked loudly. Rachel pulled her jacket down. "Car accident, long time ago." Brooks didn't buy it. She'd seen combat scars before. These weren't from seatbelts. The first real test came unexpectedly. A young private's rifle discharged without warning, a negligent shot echoing through the range. In seconds, Rachel moved. Weapon safe, chamber cleared, pressure point hold applied. The private's panic dissolved into controlled breathing. Everyone stared. Captain Brooks demanded, "Where'd you learn that? No civilian safety course teaches those techniques." Rachel's lips twitched. "YouTube," she said almost lightly. But Webb had seen enough. He approached, voice smooth as steel. "Impressive reflexes, Miss Cross." "Just training, sir." "What kind of training?" Rachel met his gaze, unflinching. "The kind that keeps people alive." Webb's smile was thin. "YouTube must have excellent courses these days." Behind them, the Delta team started whispering about ghost units, the kind of elite task forces that weren't supposed to exist. And every time someone said the word Syria, Rachel's jaw tightened. Park noticed, Hayes noticed, Webb noticed most of all. By 900, the tension had coiled tight as a wire. Park was digging through her personnel file. Clean too clean. Gaps from 2015 to 2020 marked classified medical leave. Security clearance levels that no civilian contractor should have. This doesn't make sense, Park muttered. She's flagged for classification I can't even access. Master Sergeant Cooper, a weathered veteran, pulled Rachel aside quietly. Careful, kid, he said. The wolves smell blood. Rachel nodded. Let them. They'll learn who's hunting who. Williams, the loud one, pushed too far next. Bet you can't even shoot, he jeered, tossing her an M4. Show us what you got, safety girl. Rachel didn't want to, but she took the rifle anyway. Checked the sights, adjusted the stance, fired 5 rounds. Tight group but off-center. Williams smirked, see, amateur. She made a 2-click adjustment. Switched to her left hand. Fired 5 more. A single hole dead center. The range went silent. I'm cross-eyed dominant, Rachel said softly. Right eye, left hand. But everyone knew that wasn't the explanation. Her stance, her breathing, the subtle shift between shots, this wasn't hobby shooting. It was training. Military, advanced, practiced under fire. From the observation deck, a visiting colonel froze. That's Ghost Unit stance, he whispered. I saw it in Syria. Before he could say more, Webb stepped in, ushering him away. Civilian contractor, he said coldly, nothing more. But the damage was done. By 9:30, the trap was closing. MPs shifted positions, exits quietly blocked, radios whispered. Rachel knew. She mapped this entire range that morning, identified escape routes, blind zones, secondary tunnels. Every one of them was now covered. She took a slow breath. Calm, aware, ready. When Webb's voice came through the comms, proceed with detainment, she didn't fight. Didn't resist. She went down silently, like someone who'd seen this moment coming her entire life. And when Hayes drove his knee into her back again, she whispered something only he could hear. 5 rifles, 1 truth. He frowned, what? But Rachel didn't answer. She just stared at Webb, calm, steady, and formed that same small signal with her fingers. Thumb and forefinger, number 13. It meant something. Something that was about to turn everything upside down. What would you say if the man accusing you of treason whispered your code name? The room smelled of metal and bleach. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long, cold shadows across the bolted table. Rachel sat strapped to a steel chair, wrists bound so tightly her fingers tingled. A camera blinked red in the corner, an unblinking eye that would never capture the truth of what was about to unfold. Outside the one-way glass, soldiers watched a woman they thought they knew, the quiet range officer, the ghost of Fort Bragg. Inside, Colonel Marcus Webb was smiling. Hello, Ghost 7. The words dropped like a blade. Rachel's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Her voice was calm, even, but her pulse, for the first time all morning, stuttered once. Oh, you do, Webb replied. He began to pace, slow circles around her like a predator testing the edge of its cage. You stayed dead for 5 years. That was impressive. You almost convinced me. Rachel stared straight ahead. The mirror reflected 2 figures, one in command, one in chains. I'm a range safety officer, she said evenly. Check my file. I did, Webb chuckled. Beautiful fabrication. Background, references, performance evaluations, all perfect, except for the parts that don't exist. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. I was there, Rachel, Syria, Operation Blackwater. Her heart skipped again. He saw it. You remember, don't you? I think you have me confused with someone else. He grinned. Sarah Martinez, Maya Chen, Jessica Williams, Ashley Thompson, Diana Roberts, Catherine Mitchell. Each name hit like shrapnel. 6 women who died because of bad intelligence, Webb said softly. My bad intelligence. Rachel's breath caught. The air grew heavier, the hum of the light above sounding suddenly too loud. She forced her tone flat. Those names mean nothing to me. Really? Webb stepped closer, grabbed her left arm. Then you won't mind if I check something. He ripped her sleeve, fabric tore. Underneath, the tattoo glistened faintly black ink, faded from sun and years. A serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros coiled around the number 13. Inside the circle, 7 tiny stars, 6 engraved with names too small to read, 1 left blank. There she is, Webb whispered. Ghost 7, the survivor. Rachel's eyes lifted to meet his. And something changed. The quiet, deferential woman was gone. In her place stood the operative who'd walked out of hell and built a new life on ashes. What do you want, Marcus? Her voice carried weight now, a low, measured cadence that made even the walls seem to listen. What I've always wanted, he said, to clean up loose ends. You see, Operation Blackwater wasn't a failure of intelligence. It was business. You and your team found something you weren't supposed to. My side arrangement with certain Syrian friends. 6 women died, Rachel said coldly. 6 women, he echoed. Yes, and that's been a problem, hasn't it? Because one of them refused to die. Rachel exhaled slowly, the tension leaving her shoulders. You spent 5 years looking for me. Webb smiled. Imagine my surprise when facial recognition picked you up here, on my base, pretending to be a safety officer. Rachel tilted her head. Hiding in plain sight, you taught me that. The words hit harder than he expected. His smile faltered. What aren't you telling me? He demanded. I'm telling you that I'm nobody. Webb's hand shot out, gripping her jaw, forcing her to look at him. You were somebody, once, and you could be useful again, but that depends on how this conversation ends. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Useful. He leaned in, close enough that she could smell the gun oil on his uniform. You still have contacts, ghost protocols. You think I do know? There's something coming, something bigger than both of us. I need those protocols, and you're going to give them to me. She didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a small, quiet smile that made him step back without realizing why. You still talk too much, Marcus. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Sir, Hayes shouted, panting. General Morrison just landed. He's demanding to see you. Says it's classified JSOC business. Webb froze. Morrison. The name alone made Rachel's heart jolt. Morrison, the only man who'd ever known what Ghost Unit 13 truly was. Webb hissed, Tell him I'm conducting an interrogation. He says the interrogation is over. The door sealed behind Hayes. Silence. Then Webb turned back toward Rachel, fury in his eyes. What did you do? Nothing, she said softly, yet. A distant rumble built in the hall, the synchronized footsteps of a tactical team moving fast. Webb spun toward the door. You think you can? The door exploded inward. Flashbang light filled the room, followed by the black silhouettes of SEAL Team 6. Muzzle flashes caught glints off helmets, rifles sweeping the corners in disciplined arcs. Room clear, one barked. Behind them, a tall man stepped in, calm, deliberate, General Morrison. He took one look at Webb and exhaled through his nose. Marcus. Morrison, what is this? Webb snapped. You're violating. Standing order from JSOC command. Morrison's tone was mild, almost conversational. Effective immediately, Colonel Marcus Webb is relieved of duty pending investigation for espionage and treason. Treason? Webb laughed, high brittle. You can't prove. You mean this device? The voice came from behind him. Rachel. Her hands were free, cuffs dangling open. In one palm, a small encrypted drive, his drive. Webb's eyes widened. How? When did I get free? She finished for him. About 30 seconds after you dismissed your guards. Dislocating thumbs hurts like hell, but it's effective. She stood slowly. The chains fell away, clattering against the floor. The transformation was complete. The hunted had become the hunter. 5 years, Marcus, she said quietly. I waited 5 years for you to confirm what I already suspected, that you sold us out. Webb's hand twitched toward his pocket. Rachel moved faster. A nerve struck to his shoulder. A sweep of the leg, he hit the floor hard, paralyzed from the neck down. Temporary, she said to Morrison. 6 hours, plenty of time to process him. The SEAL operators stared, not just at her efficiency, but at who she was. One whispered, "Is that really Ghost 7? Morrison nodded once, the only survivor of Blackwater. Webb lay gasping. You think this changes anything? I have files, names, locations, every ghost still in the field. One button and they all burn. You mean this button? Rachel held up a second device, the small transmitter she'd palmed while he was packing. Webb's face drained of color. 5 years ago, she said softly, kneeling beside him, you betrayed 7 women who trusted you. 6 died. I survived. You've spent every day since trying to erase me, but you forgot one thing. What's that? He rasped. I don't die easy. She pressed the transmitter into Morrison's hand. Everything's recorded. His confession, the files, the comms. You have what you need. Morrison met her gaze. You planned this. Rachel nodded. The moment I saw his face this morning, I knew. I just needed him to talk. Webb tried to speak, but the words came out slurred. Rachel leaned close, whispered something only he could hear. Whatever it was made him flinch, genuine terror in his eyes. Later, Morrison would ask what she'd said. Her answer would be simple. I told him about his insurance policy, the one that keeps his family safe as long as he cooperates. Hours later, the base buzzed with rumors. The range officer was in protective custody. The colonel was under arrest. Half the command didn't know what to believe. In Morrison's office, Rachel sat across from him, hands bandaged, eyes steady. You could have killed him, he said. I don't kill for closure, she replied, only for necessity. He studied her a long moment. What now? You're exposed. No going back to the range. Rachel touched the tattoo on her arm. 6 stars for the fallen, 1 for me. Maybe it's time we stop being ghosts. Morrison leaned back, considering. Female special operations units are official now. You could lead one. Not in the shadows. Not entirely. Enough light for accountability, enough dark for effectiveness. Rachel rose, staring out the window. The training field stretched beyond the glass, washed in afternoon sun. Soldiers moved like ants, alive, oblivious to how close their world had come to corruption. Outside, Hayes was probably writing his report, struggling to explain how he'd arrested an American hero. Williams would be in the gym, punishing his guilt with push-ups. Brooks sat in confinement, her career over, one more pawn who'd backed the wrong man. Rachel felt none of the satisfaction she thought she would, only a deep, hollow exhaustion. They called us ghosts, she said quietly, because we operated where women weren't supposed to be, doing jobs that didn't officially exist, but we were real. Morrison nodded, and now the world will know. A pause. There's something else, he added. The message you received, the one about Bishop, we need to talk about that. Rachel turned slowly. Bishop been dead for 3 years. That's what we thought, Morrison said, but the signal came from his authentication codes. Either someone has his access, or Blackwater had more survivors than just you. The air in the room seemed to shift, the beginning of another storm building at the horizon. Rachel's fingers brushed the empty 7th star on her tattoo. Then it's not over, she murmured. No, Morrison agreed. It's just beginning. Outside, the late daylight bled gold across the base. Inside, a ghost breathed again, a woman reborn not through vengeance but through purpose. Somewhere out there, answers waited. And Rachel Cross, Ghost 7, was ready to find them. Because sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It acts. Quietly, completely. And when it does, the world remembers. How do you look a mother in the eye when you survived what her daughter did? The ceremony hall at Fort Bragg had never looked like this. Flags lined the walls. Rows of folding chairs faced a small stage draped in black cloth and silence. At the front, 6 portraits. 6 women in uniform, caught forever in the kind of smiles soldiers give before boarding the last helicopter they'll ever ride. Rachel stood at the edge of the crowd, dress uniform pressed, medals gleaming faintly against fabric that felt alien after so long in hiding. For 5 years she'd lived as a ghost. Now, under the bright lights of recognition, she almost wished for the shadows again. General Morrison stepped to the podium. His voice carried the calm weight of a man used to delivering hard truths. "Today," he said, "we bring light to names that were buried in darkness. They called them Ghost Unit 13, 7 women who operated where no one thought women could go and who gave everything for it." Rachel's jaw tightened. 6 gave everything. 1 was still breathing. Morrison read citations that had been sealed in classified files. Bronze stars, Purple Hearts, intelligence commendations. As he spoke, families wept quietly, the kind of tears that come when grief finally has somewhere to land. When he called her forward, Rachel's boots echoed across the hall. She stopped in front of the portraits, saluted, and turned to face the families. "My name is Rachel Cross," she said softly. "I served with them, and I failed them." No one breathed. "I was there when everything went wrong in Syria. I survived because luck chose me that day. They didn't get that chance, but they deserve more than silence." She told them stories that had never been written down, small, human stories that no medal could capture. Sarah Martinez carrying a wounded civilian on her back through a firefight. Maya Chen cracking a joke seconds before lining up a shot that saved 30 men. Jessica Williams stitching up a Marine with kitchen utensils and prayer. Ashley Thompson intercepting chatter that stopped an ambush before it began. Diana Roberts sensing danger in places radar couldn't see. Catherine Mitchell, their leader, calling in air support on her own position to save the rest. "They called us ghosts," Rachel said, voice breaking. "But ghosts don't die. They wait for justice, for truth, for remembrance. And today they have it." A ripple moved through the crowd, a mixture of pride and grief and awe. Mrs. Martinez, frail and trembling, stepped forward. Her hands rose to Rachel's face as if to confirm she was real. "You were with her," she whispered. "Every day," Rachel said. "She was the bravest person I ever knew." The woman nodded, tears falling freely. "Then thank you for bringing her home." For the first time in years, Rachel let herself cry. Not for the mission, not for the betrayal, but for them, for what had been stolen. After the ceremony, people drifted away in clusters, families trading contact numbers, reporters escorted out before questions turned dangerous. Rachel stood alone near the portraits. The room smelled of flowers and dust and closure. Lieutenant Park approached, laptop under his arm, face pale in the screen's glow. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "we need to talk." He turned the screen toward her. Lines of code and encrypted pings scrolled down the display. "That message you got before the arrest, package arriving today, I traced its signature. Same encryption shows up again, today 1900 hours, but it's not static, it's live." Rachel frowned. "Live? Someone's using the same authentication keys right now. Whoever Bishop was, he's active." She stared at the screen. "Bishop's dead." Park shook his head. "Maybe not. Before she could reply, Morrison appeared, still in full dress uniform, the weight of command visible in every line of his face. "The families are being escorted out," he said. "You did good, Cross. They finally have their answers." Rachel's gaze stayed on the scrolling data. Not all of them. Morrison followed her look. Something new. Possibly someone old. He didn't press. He knew the look in her eyes, the one soldiers get when peace starts to feel like a lie. By dusk, Fort Bragg had quieted. The sun slipped behind the hangars, painting the sky the color of burnt copper. Rachel walked the perimeter road, needing the distance between her and the noise of applause. The sound of her own footsteps was a rhythm she trusted. She passed the range where it had all started, the same cracked concrete, the same scent of oil and cordite. Miguel, the old janitor, was locking up. "Knew you'd come by," he said without surprise. Rachel smiled faintly. Old habits. He studied her for a moment. "They gave them their names back today. That must feel good." "It feels," she searched for the word, "unfinished." Miguel nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. "Some ghosts don't want graves," he said. "They want closure." Rachel looked past him to the firing lanes where she'd once been handcuffed. "Closure's a luxury." "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes closure comes looking for you." Before she could ask what he meant, her secure phone buzzed. The screen glowed with a single line of text. "Bishop COMPROMICD. Execute Protocol 7. The air seemed to freeze. She deleted it instantly, but she knew it was too late. Park systems would have already logged the ping. Miguel watched her expression change. Bad news. Rachel slipped the phone back into her pocket. "Just ghosts." He gave a slow nod, the kind that belonged to old soldiers who recognized a storm when they smelled one. "Then I'll say what we used to say before it started. Keep your powder dry, Mika." An hour later, Rachel stood outside Morrison's office. Inside, voices tight-clipped. She recognized Parks, then Morrison, then silence. When she entered, both men looked up. Parks spoke first. "Ma'am, that code you received, it triggered an automated alert inside JSOC's network. The message header carried your old mission designator, Blackwater." Morrison's eyes met hers. "Who else knows you're alive?" "No one who isn't supposed to." "Then someone inside that network just called you back to life." Rachel's pulse steadied. The old calm returned, the combat calm. Could be a misdirection, could be bait. "Or Bishop," Morrison said quietly. She looked at him. "He died in Romania." "So did a lot of people who still send messages," he replied. They fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, the kind that comes before a southern storm. Finally, Morrison exhaled. "Whatever this is, it's not over. I can feel it." Rachel nodded slowly. "Then we prepare." The next morning, the base moved with nervous energy. Webb's arrest had shaken command channels, and whispers of corruption had spread faster than orders could contain them. Rachel kept her head down, going through motions. Debriefs, paperwork, quiet meals in the mess hall she once passed unnoticed. But the whispers followed her now. Ghost 7, survivor, the one who brought down Webb. She didn't want the legend back. She wanted the truth. That evening, Morrison called her to his office again. Park was already there, pale and restless. "Ma'am," he said, turning his laptop toward her, "we confirmed the signal origin. It's bouncing through half the planet, but the core trace sits in Eastern Europe. And look at the tagline." Rachel leaned in. At the bottom of the data stream, a simple signature flickered in green. "Be alive." Her breath caught. "It's him." "Or someone using his credentials," Park said. "But they're not spoofed. These are active updates, heartbeat pings, command-level access." Morrison folded his arms. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone with Bishop's clearance is alive and moving through restricted databases. And the queries are specific. names of surviving Ghost Unit members. Rachel felt the temperature in the room drop. "Why now?" "That," Morrison said, "is the question keeping me awake." Silence stretched. Finally, Rachel straightened. "Then I'm going to find out." Morrison frowned. "You've been through enough." "Exactly why I'm the one who should go." He hesitated, then reached into his desk drawer. A small device, sleek black military grade. "Panic button," he said. "Press it, and SEAL Team 6 drops on your position in 90 seconds. Rachel took it, pocketed it, and met his eyes. "Let's hope I never need it." Night fell like a curtain. Rain swept across the tarmac in shimmering waves. Rachel walked alone toward the motor pool, the sound of thunder chasing her steps. She stopped under the awning, looked up at the storm-lit sky, and whispered to no one. "You're supposed to be dead, Ethan. What game are you playing?" Her phone buzzed again. Another message. 7 stars became 6. Soon 6 BECOMES 5. Unless the 7th joins US. 10 MINUTES. Loading dock, come alone. B. Her heartbeat slowed instead of quickened. Of course it was a trap. But traps reveal hunters just as much as prey. She walked back into the rain, the world around her echoing with the low growl of approaching thunder. Somewhere beyond the gates of Fort Bragg, someone had rewritten the story she thought was finished. And now the ghosts were stirring again. She glanced once toward the ceremony hall still glowing with faint light, the portraits of her sisters still watching. "I guess closure will have to wait," she murmured. The storm swallowed her words as she disappeared into the night. Inside Morrison's office, Park watched her tracker move toward the edge of the base map. "She's going alone," he said. Morrison didn't look away from the screen. "She was born alone on the battlefield," he said quietly. "Let's trust she knows how to walk through one more." Outside, lightning split the sky. And in its flash, Rachel Cross moved like a shadow given form. A soldier, a survivor, a ghost returning to life. Because sometimes the dead don't rest until the living make things right. How do you meet the dead when they're the only ones who know you're still alive? Rain hammered against corrugated steel as Rachel stepped onto the loading dock. The world had narrowed to sound and shadow, the steady hiss of downpour, the metallic echo of her boots against concrete, the distant hum of floodlights cutting through the storm. Her pulse was steady, her breathing measured. Old instincts had already taken over, 3 sniper angles, 2 ambush points, 1 exit route memorized without conscious thought. Then a voice cut through the rain. "Hello, 7. It came from the darkness beyond the floodlights, low, familiar. She froze. A figure emerged, hooded, lean, carrying the weary stillness of someone who'd lived too long in the shadows. "You look well," he said quietly, "for a dead woman." Rachel's hand hovered near the small pistol at her back. "Ethan." The man stepped closer, rain streaking down his face. His eyes, sharp once, now hollow, caught the light. "Same way you survived," he said, "by becoming someone else." Rachel's voice was calm, but every muscle in her body was ready. "You died in Romania." "I needed to," Bishop replied. "You of all people should understand that." They stood in silence, rain pattering against the roof, memories flickering between them, the last mission, the fire, the betrayal. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "This base is locked down." "So is the truth," he answered, "and you're still chasing it." Rachel studied him carefully. He looked different, leaner, older. The boyish tech specialist she'd known had been replaced by something harder, sharper, a man rebuilt from betrayal. "What do you want, Ethan?" He smiled faintly. "Not what, who, we need to talk, not here." "Talk about what?" He nodded toward a black SUV idling nearby, lights dimmed. "About why Ghost Unit 13 really died." Her heart stopped. "I already know why, Webb." "Webb was a pawn," Bishop interrupted. You went after the symptom, not the disease. He opened the passenger door. The engine purred low, controlled. Get in 7, you've earned the truth. Rachel hesitated. Every protocol in her head screamed trap. But curiosity, that dangerous human weakness, whispered louder. She slid into the seat, leaving the door slightly unlatched, just in case. The interior smelled faintly of sand and gun oil. Military-issue comms gear lined the back. Not a casual ride, a command vehicle. Who's driving? She asked. The driver turned slightly, a woman in tactical fatigues, silent, focused. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. Rachel recognized the posture, special operations. Someone who owes me her life, Bishop said. The SUV rolled forward into the rain, slipping past security gates that seemed to open on their own. How did you get clearance for that? Rachel asked. Bishop gave a humorless smile. Let's just say not all of Morrison's systems are as secure as he thinks. They drove in silence for a few minutes, through the outer perimeter, down rural roads slick with rain. When they were finally alone with the night, Bishop reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet. I think you deserve to see what you almost died for. The screen flickered to life. Satellite imagery, a dusty compound in northern Syria. Rachel's stomach clenched. Blackwater, she said softly. He swiped again. The feed changed to intercepted transmissions, coordinates, voice chatter, classified overlays. You were compromised, he said. Hours before the mission started. Every route, every fallback point. The enemy knew where you'd be before you did. She frowned. Webb sold us out, we confirmed that. Webb executed the betrayal, Bishop said. He didn't orchestrate it. Another swipe. A face appeared on the screen, older, immaculate, the kind of man who carried power like perfume. Rachel's breath caught. Nathan Cross. Bishop nodded. Deputy Director, Special Activities Division, your handler, my handler, the man who trained you, the one who sent us all to die. She stared at the photo, the nameplate beneath it glowing faintly. Her mind replayed the past, every debrief, every classified message, every mission brief signed with the same initials, NC. Why? Because we stopped being useful, Bishop said. Ghost units were too efficient, too independent. We did what others wouldn't, and Washington got nervous. Plausible deniability only works if you can deny, but we knew too much. Rachel shook her head slowly. So they killed their own. They cleaned house, Bishop corrected. You, me, 30 others across 5 units. Disposable assets in operations that didn't officially exist. She felt something heavy settle in her chest, not surprise, not disbelief. Just a cold, weary confirmation. And you, she asked quietly, why fake your death? He looked out the rain-streaked window. Because I saw the feed. I saw your team's signal disappear. I saw the ambush. By the time I realized it wasn't enemy intel but our own, it was too late to warn you. So I went dark, built something new. He turned the tablet toward her again. Photos of other soldiers, files marked deceased, names she didn't know. 43 confirmed survivors, Bishop said, all with the same story. Missions turned against them, teams erased, families told lies. He leaned back, eyes shadowed. I call them ghosts, the real ones, and they've been waiting for justice. Rachel studied the images. Men and women from every branch, every corner of the world, different faces. Same look, haunted, angry, unbroken. You built a network. I built a truth bomb, he said, and you're the detonator. She didn't answer right away. You brought me out here to recruit me. No, he said, to warn you. Morrison's investigation just kicked the hornet's nest. Cross is spooked. He's moving assets, erasing evidence. If we don't move first, he'll vanish again. And with him, the names of everyone still alive. Rachel looked down at her hands, hands that still bore faint bruises from the cuffs. I spent 5 years trying to forget this, she said, trying to live as someone normal. And did it work? She didn't answer. The SUV turned off the main road, heading into the forest. Ahead, a small ranger station came into view, lights dimmed, perimeter lined with cameras disguised as wildlife monitors. "Welcome to the in-between," Bishop said. "Not quite home, not quite exile." The SUV stopped. The driver got out first, scanning the tree line. Rachel followed, every sense alert. Inside, the building looked ordinary: maps, desks, coffee mugs. But beneath the floorboards, a trapdoor led to something else. A secure bunker, equipment, servers, weapons. And people. 3 of them. They rose as Rachel entered, eyes sharp, movements crisp. Each carried the same energy: readiness, trauma, purpose. "Daniels," Bishop said, pointing to a broad-shouldered man with a scar running across his neck. "Delta Force, Somalia, 2017. "Chen," he continued, nodding to a woman with calm, lethal posture. "Naval Intelligence, Manila Operation." "And Rodriguez, Air Force Special Operations, Kandahar." Each nodded at her. No handshakes, ghosts didn't need them. "So this is the legend," Daniel said, "the one who lived." Rachel's tone was flat. "Barely." Rodriguez folded her arms. "Bishop says you have connections, access. You can make the truth public." Rachel's gaze swept the room. "You think exposure is justice. You think Washington will admit any of this happened." "Maybe not," Bishop said, "but they'll feel it. You can't kill ghosts. You can only try to forget them." She looked at him. "And if I say no?" He shrugged. "Then we keep fighting from the shadows. You go back to your range, pretending normal still exists." Rachel exhaled. "I'm done pretending." Bishop reached into a metal case and pulled out a small drive. "Then you'll want this. 5 years of evidence, financial records, intercepts, internal communications. Crosses empire in digital form." Rachel turned it over in her hands. Such a small thing to hold so many graves. "And what happens after?" "Then we bring him down," Bishop said. "Legally, publicly, permanently. You work with Morrison, he's clean. I provide the evidence. Together we make it impossible to bury." Rachel met his gaze. "And your people?" "They follow your lead. If you walk away, they walk away. If you fight," he paused, "they'll fight until it's done." For a long moment no one spoke. Rain drummed against the roof, thunder fading into distance. Finally Rachel nodded once. "Give me 48 hours, I'll verify the data. If it checks out, we do it by the book. No revenge, no blood." Chen's eyes narrowed. "After what they did to us, you still care about rules?" Rachel turned to her. "Because the moment we stop caring about rules, we become them. And I've buried enough monsters." The room fell silent again. Then Bishop smiled faintly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Welcome back, Ghost 7. An hour later, as the SUV carried her back toward Fort Bragg, Rachel watched the forest blur past. She spoke softly, almost to herself. 43 ghosts, and I'm supposed to give them peace." Bishop's voice came through her earpiece, calm, resolute. "You're not giving them peace, 7. You're giving them purpose." The SUV slowed near the north checkpoint. She opened the door before it stopped. "I walked out for air after the ceremony," she said. "That's all anyone needs to know." "And Bishop?" the driver asked. Rachel's gaze hardened. "Bishop's still dead." The door closed. The SUV disappeared into the darkness. Rain still fell as she approached the guard station. The young sergeant on duty saluted nervously. "Ma'am, everything okay?" Rachel nodded. "Just a long day." He didn't notice the small drive she slipped into her pocket. Behind her, thunder rolled one last time, low, distant, like the heartbeat of something awakening. And in that sound, Rachel Cross knew, the ghosts weren't done haunting. Not yet. How much truth can one person carry before it starts feeling like another kind of lie. The rain had stopped by morning. Fort Bragg lay under a pale, washed-out sky, the kind that made even concrete look weary. Rachel walked across the tarmac, uniform crisp, expression unreadable, the small drive hidden beneath her jacket pressing faintly against her ribs. Every step felt heavier than the last. She passed soldiers she knew by face, but not by name, men and women still living in a world where orders made sense. They nodded, smiled, saluted. She nodded back, silently envying their ignorance. Inside the administrative wing, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The same corridor where she'd once been marched in cuffs now carried her toward Morrison's office. A poetic symmetry she didn't appreciate. The door was half open. Morrison sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled, eyes red from a night without sleep. Lieutenant Park hovered near the window, face pale, laptop open. When Rachel entered, Morrison looked up immediately. "Close the door," he said. She did. Without a word, she set the drive on the desk. The sound it made, a soft, metallic click, felt heavier than gunfire. Morrison stared at it. "Is that what I think it is?" "It's everything," she said quietly. "Bishop's files, proof that Nathan Cross turned ghost unit into bait." Park's fingers froze mid-type. "That's impossible. He's untouchable. He runs half of SAD's shadow operations." "Exactly why this matters," Rachel said. "It's not about bringing him down. It's about making sure he can't erase anyone else." Morrison picked up the drive, turned it over in his hand like something radioactive. "If this is real," he murmured, "this could blow open 20 years of Black Ops doctrine." "It's real," Rachel said, "but it's booby-trapped. Bishop embedded a failsafe, wrong decryption key, and the entire archive self-corrupts." Park frowned. "So how do we access it?" "Through me," Rachel said, "and only once." Morrison leaned back. "He trusts you that much?" She hesitated. "He trusts what I represent, the one who didn't die." For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the overhead lights filled the silence. Finally, Morrison said, "Let's move to the secure lab." They descended 2 floors underground, through biometric checkpoints and reinforced steel doors. The air grew colder, heavier. Inside the lab, monitors lined the walls like silent sentinels. Technicians moved quietly, their curiosity dulled by routine. "Clear the room," Morrison ordered. They obeyed without question. When the last door sealed, Park set up the isolated terminal. Rachel inserted the drive. The screen blinked once, then again. A black window opened, text crawling across like a heartbeat. "Authentication required. Ghost 7, voice verification." Rachel leaned close, her voice steady. "Rachel Cross, authorization Echo 72 Bravo." A pause. Then the screen flickered and unfolded into dozens of files, video feeds, encrypted documents, archived communications. Park's breath caught. "Oh my God." Images flashed across the screens. Satellite maps of the Syrian compound. Webb's bank accounts offshore. Coded transmissions signed with the initials NC. And worst of all, a video feed from that night. Rachel forced herself to watch. The footage was grainy but unmistakable, her unit moving through the compound, orders echoing through comms. Then the explosion, the chaos, the sudden silence. And over it all a voice, calm, American. "Confirm kill package, no survivors." Morrison's jaw clenched. "That's Cross." Rachel nodded. "That's the voice I heard when my radio went dead." Park looked like he might be sick. He ordered the strike on his own team. Rachel's voice stayed steady. "He did worse. He used us to frame a foreign asset, then sold the fallout to justify a private contract expansion." Morrison exhaled sharply. "A war built on ghosts." "Exactly," she said. "We were the excuse." Park swallowed hard. "So what do we do now?" We make it undeniable, Rachel said. Get this to the oversight committee. Secure channels, eyes only. Once it's out, no one can bury it. Morrison looked at her carefully. You trust the system? No, she said, but I trust the truth to make noise. He nodded slowly. Then we start with a courier drop, neutral territory. Dubai, Rachel said without hesitation. Park blinked. Dubai. Cross runs his front companies through a shell firm there, Aegis Global Logistics. If he feels heat, that's where he'll go to scrub it. We get there first, plant the evidence, leak it from his own servers. Morrison gave a humorless smile. Poetic justice. Rachel met his eyes. That's the only kind left. The next 48 hours blurred into motion. Rachel and Park worked in silence, assembling the digital payload, compressed data, auto-release encryption, timed redundancies. The slightest tampering would scatter the files to 10 international media outlets. Bishop had built it well. Rachel made it bulletproof. Meanwhile, Morrison coordinated clearance through diplomatic channels. Officially, it was a liaison mission. Unofficially, it was a bomb wrapped in paperwork. They didn't talk about what would happen if it failed. Late one night, Park leaned against the console, exhaustion making him look younger. Ma'am, he said, why do you keep doing this? Rachel looked up from the terminal. Because the truth doesn't survive on its own. It needs someone willing to walk through the fire again. He nodded, but his eyes betrayed something deeper: fear. Do you ever stop seeing it, the faces? She hesitated, then said quietly, no, but I've learned to let them walk beside me instead of behind me. He looked down, not sure how to respond. Rachel returned to her work. You'll understand someday, she said softly. If you're lucky, you won't. By dawn, the operation was set. Rachel stood on the runway beside the transport plane, the rising sun bleeding orange across the horizon. The air tasted like jet fuel and consequence. Morrison approached, file in hand. Travel papers. You and Park are listed as civilian consultants, low profile. Rachel accepted the file, flipping through it mechanically. You're not coming. Not yet, he said. If this goes wrong, someone has to stay here and clean the smoke. You mean take the fall? He smiled faintly. That's what rank for. They shook hands, firm, wordless, final. Cross will see you coming, Morrison warned. He survived by erasing people like you. Then I'll remind him what it feels like to be remembered, she said. Morrison nodded once. Good hunting, Ghost 7. She turned toward the plane, climbing the ramp with practiced grace. Park followed, still clutching his laptop like a shield. As the hatch sealed, Rachel strapped in, staring out the small, round window. The base receded into distance, shrinking until it became a memory. The engines roared to life, drowning everything in white noise. And in that noise, her mind drifted, back to Bishop's words, to the 6 faces on that wall, to the one she still hadn't avenged. For years she'd carried their silence, now she carried their voice. 12 hours later, the plane touched down in Dubai. The city stretched like a mirage, steel and glass rising from sand, sunlight burning gold across the skyline. Rachel stepped out into the heat, civilian clothes now, sunglasses, hair tied back. Invisible again. Park followed, adjusting his cap, nerves jittering through every movement. So what now? He asked. She scanned the horizon. Now we walk into the lion's den. Without backup. She smiled faintly. With ghosts. They moved through the city like shadows. Every step had purpose. Every glance meant something. Rachel's instincts mapped exits, cameras, patterns. Park followed her lead, pretending calm he didn't feel. By afternoon, they reached a nondescript high-rise near the financial district. Aegis Global Logistics, polished glass, mirrored lobby, quiet menace. Rachel's gaze fixed on the logo near the entrance, the stylized serpent devouring its tail. The same mark inked on her arm. Of course he'd use that. Nathan Cross never hid his arrogance. He wore it like armor. Once we're inside, she told Park, you find a terminal, plug the payload, don't stop for anything. You have 90 seconds before their system flags the breach. And you? I'll find Cross. He stared. You're going to walk into his office. She adjusted her jacket, eyes cold. I'm going to walk into his past. The lobby air was cool and sharp with the scent of ozone. Security guards eyed them briefly, then looked away. Another pair of consultants on another meaningless errand. They took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened into silence. A long corridor, frosted glass walls, the hum of wealth and secrets. Rachel moved first, her reflection trailing beside her like an old ghost. At the end of the corridor, a door waited. Nathan Cross, deputy director, retired. Retired right. She didn't bother knocking. The door opened easily. Cross stood behind his desk, immaculate as ever. Silver hair, measured smile. A man who looked like he'd never bled a day in his life. He didn't look surprised. Rachel, he said softly, it's been a long time. She closed the door behind her. Not long enough. He smiled, as if this were a reunion instead of an indictment. I always wondered which would kill you first, the guilt or the truth. I'm still deciding, she said. Cross leaned back, hands clasped. You should have stayed dead. You were perfect that way, tragic, useful, forgotten. And you were almost perfect, she said, except you forgot one thing. Oh. She stepped closer, her voice quiet. Ghosts don't forget. Downstairs, Park inserted the drive into a server port. The screen blinked. A progress bar crawled upward. 40%, 50. Upstairs, Cross poured 2 glasses of scotch. You came all this way to accuse me of something no one will believe. I came to remind you, Rachel said, that the dead have witnesses. He smiled faintly. And you think your little file will matter. By the time anyone reads it, it'll be gone. You'll be gone. Rachel's earpiece crackled softly. Park's voice urgent. Upload complete. She smiled. Maybe, but so will you. Cross's hand froze around his glass. Rachel turned toward the door. Behind her, the building's alarms began to wail. You can erase the past, she said over her shoulder, but you can't erase what's watching. And then she was gone. Outside, sunlight flared against glass towers. Sirens echoed. Somewhere in Washington, encrypted files detonated across secure networks like silent explosions. Rachel and Park disappeared into the crowd. No fanfare. No applause. Just 2 shadows fading into heat. Because sometimes victory isn't loud. It's the sound of silence finally telling the truth. What happens after the truth finally escapes? Silence. That's what Rachel remembered first. No sirens, no gunfire, just the quiet hum of air conditioning in the rented apartment above the souks of old Dubai. She sat by the window, still wearing the same jacket from the mission, fingers wrapped around a cooling mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Below, the city buzzed, traffic, shouts, music, but up here everything felt suspended, waiting. Park sat across from her, laptop balanced on his knees, eyes bloodshot. He hadn't stopped scanning the encrypted feed since dawn. Half the file packages detonated across global nodes, he said. Reuters, Al Jazeera, Interpol Data Division all got fragments. Oversight Committee too. It's out there. Rachel didn't move, and Cross vanished, pulled his biometric tags, disconnected everything. He's a ghost now. She smiled bitterly. He learned from the best. The truth was supposed to feel like freedom. Instead, it felt like waiting for a bullet you couldn't see. At noon, Morrison called. His voice came through the secure line, tired, strained. like someone who'd been shouting at stone walls all morning. Rachel, it's chaos here. The leak hit like a bomb. Congress wants heads, JSOC wants deniability, CIA's already spinning new acronyms. You just made history and enemies. Where Cross? She asked. Gone. He burned every trace before it reached the press. We've got fragments enough to confirm, not enough to convict. Rachel exhaled slowly. He anticipated it. He anticipated everything, Morrison said, including you. The line went quiet for a beat, then his tone softened. Listen, your name in those files. Ghost Unit 13 still classified, but certain circles are connecting dots. You're not invisible anymore. I was never invisible, she said, just ignored. Then keep moving. Dubai isn't safe. I'll find you a corridor out through Bahrain in 48 hours. Morrison. But the line cut before she could finish. The next 2 days blurred together. They moved between safe houses, cheap hotels, back alley cafes where no one asked names. Rachel kept her hair tied up, face shadowed under a cap. Park slept in short bursts, jumpy at every sound. By the second night, he couldn't take the quiet anymore. Why aren't we celebrating? He asked suddenly. You exposed him, the world knows now. Rachel looked at him over the rim of her cup. Knowing isn't the same as believing, she said. They'll call it misinformation, counterintel, another conspiracy theory. The truth doesn't win by existing. It wins by surviving. He frowned. So what now? We wait, we listen. Cross won't disappear completely. Men like him need control too badly to stay buried. She turned toward the window. Outside, the lights of Dubai shimmered across the harbor, beautiful, unreal, like a promise the world had no intention of keeping. Do you regret it? Park asked quietly. She thought about it. The families, the portraits, the years of hiding, the faces that still came to her in dreams. No, she said finally. Regret is for mistakes. This was survival. He nodded, though he didn't really understand. Few could. Sometime after midnight, the phone buzzed again. Unknown number, encrypted channel. Rachel hesitated before answering. A voice, calm, low, male. You move like a soldier and breathe like a ghost, it said. Her heart stopped for a beat. Ethan. Hello, 7. She exhaled. Where the hell have you been? Cleaning up your mess, Bishop replied dryly. Cross isn't gone. He's watching you. Her pulse steadied, her tone cool. You said he'd run. He ran straight into the storm you started. He's already countering, blaming the leaks on rogue operatives, maybe even me. You'll be next. Rachel's grip tightened on the phone. Let him. You don't get it, Bishop said. He's not coming to discredit you. He's coming to finish what he started. Your leak cost powerful people more than reputation. It cost them leverage. And when they lose leverage, they hunt. Where? Follow the money, Bishop said. Aegis Logistics started transferring assets to a subsidiary in Doha 2 hours ago. That's where he'll rebuild. But if you go after him now, you'll be doing it alone. Story of my life. Not this time, Bishop said. I've got 3 ghosts inbound. We can meet halfway, Oman coast, extraction point Bravo 9. Rachel hesitated. You're sure about the intel? I'm sure enough to risk dying for it, again. Then the line clicked dead. Morning broke hot and unforgiving. Rachel packed light. 1 bag, 2 weapons, a worn photograph folded neatly inside. 6 faces, smiling in dust and sunlight. Park watched silently from the doorway. Wherever you're going, he said, I'm coming. She shook her head. No, you stay. Morrison needs eyes inside the network. I need you alive. Ma'am. Park, she interrupted gently. You're a soldier now, whether they give you a uniform or not. You do your part. He swallowed hard, nodded once. Yes, ma'am. She smiled faintly. Do, ma'am, me, just keep the lights on. And then she was gone. By afternoon, She was crossing the empty desert highway south toward Oman. The world stretched flat and infinite, sand, heat, horizon. No music, no chatter, just wind against metal and the low growl of the engine. She drove until the sun fell and the stars began to burn overhead, cold and perfect. Each mile pulled her deeper into the silence she'd always trusted more than words. When she finally stopped, it was at an abandoned fueling station on the edge of nowhere. A single light flickered weakly above the doorway. And beside it, 3 figures. Bishop stepped forward, hood pulled low. Behind him, Chen and Daniels, the ghosts she'd met before. Their eyes met hers, no greetings, no questions. "You sure he'll come?" Chen asked. "He's already here," Rachel said. Bishop frowned. "How do you know?" She turned her head slightly, scanning the darkness, because the wind just changed. A second later, headlights flared in the distance. Black SUVs, 2 of them moving fast. "Company," Daniels muttered, chambering around. Rachel's voice stayed calm. "Hold positions, no firing until I say." The vehicle slowed, stopping 50 yards out. Doors opened, shadows spilled into the desert. And from the lead car, a single man stepped forward. Immaculate suit, tie loose, confidence radiating like heat. Nathan Cross. He looked older up close, more lines, less mercy. But the eyes were the same, calm, calculating, amused. "Rachel," he called, "you always did know how to ruin a sunset." She took a step forward, every motion deliberate. "And you always knew how to hide behind other people's graves." He smiled, still dramatic. "Still breathing," she said. They stood facing each other, ghosts between them, desert wind carrying the smell of dust and inevitability. "You leaked my files," Cross said. "You think that makes you righteous?" "No," Rachel said softly, "just accountable." "Accountability is a myth, my dear. People believe what they're told. I tell better stories than you." "Not this time." He laughed. "You think Bishop's little rebellion matters. You think anyone cares. You're relics, tools built for a war that doesn't exist anymore." Rachel tilted her head. "Then why are you afraid of us?" For the first time, his smile faltered. "Walk away," he said. "You won't get another offer." She took another step forward. "I don't take offers from men who bury their own." The wind howled harder now, sand swirling between them. Bishop shifted beside her, whispering, "Say the word." Rachel's gaze stayed locked on Cross. "Not yet." Cross glanced toward his convoy. His guards raised their weapons, black silhouettes against a blood-red sky. And then gunfire. Short, controlled bursts, sparks against the sand. The ghosts moved like shadows, precise, silent, unstoppable. Rachel dropped low, rolled behind the concrete barrier, returned fire. Every shot echoed the rhythm of memory. Sarah, Maya, Jessica, Ashley, Diana, Catherine. 6 bullets, 6 ghosts. When the dust cleared, the guards were down. Cross's SUV sat riddled with holes, its engine hissing. But Cross himself was gone. Rachel stood, scanning the horizon. A second vehicle peeled away in the distance, tail lights shrinking toward the border. Bishop swore, "He's running again." Rachel's breathing steadied. "Let him." Chen frowned. "You're just going to let him escape." Rachel watched the horizon fade into darkness. "For now," she said, "the truth's already faster than he is." They buried the bodies under the desert moon, quietly, without ceremony. Ghosts cleaning up the aftermath of ghosts. When it was done, Bishop sat beside the dying fire, staring into the flames. "You could have killed him," he said. Rachel nodded. "But then the story ends with another body in the sand, and I'm tired of endings like that." He looked at her, something like respect in his eyes. "So what now?" Rachel stared into the distance, the endless, forgiving dark. "Now we find the others," she said. 43 ghosts don't deserve to disappear. we bring them home. The wind carried her words away, scattering them across the dunes. Because some wars don't end with surrender. They end with remembrance. And sometimes the only way to fight the shadows is to become the light that keeps them from coming back. How do you lead people who have already died once? The desert had gone silent again. No gunfire now, no engines, only wind moving across sand, erasing footprints before the world could notice. Rachel sat by the dying fire, the flames small and stubborn against the dawn. Bishop dozed nearby, rifle across his knees. Chen cleaned her weapon in ritual silence. Daniel stared at the horizon like it owed him an apology. They were alive technically, but alive was a relative term for ghosts. Rachel's hands trembled slightly. When she unwrapped the old photograph she kept folded in her pocket. 7 faces, 6 smiles, 1 ghost staring back. She smoothed it gently, as if touching the past could still make it breathe. "You're quiet," Bishop said from across the fire. "Thinking," she replied. "That's dangerous," he said. Rachel smiled faintly. "You still joke like you haven't been shot twice." He shrugged. "Laughing at the dark is how we stayed sane." Silence again, only the crackle of embers. Finally, Rachel said what none of them had. "We can't stay here. Cross won't stop until he controls the narrative again. He'll rewrite it, bury it, make us the villains in our own story." Daniels looked up. "So what's the play?" Rachel met his eyes. "We finish what we started. We expose the rest of the network." Chen frowned. "You mean go public? With what? Half the world already thinks we're mercenaries or traitors." "Then we show them what truth costs," Rachel said. Bishop leaned forward, studying her face. "You realize what you're saying? We'll be hunted by every agency we've ever worked for." Rachel's tone was calm. "Then we stop hiding, the ghosts go visible." He stared for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You sound like Catherine." Rachel's voice softened. "She taught me that silence only protects the wrong side of history." 2 days later, they reached an old NATO safe house in northern Oman. Stone walls, rusted radios, a cracked satellite dish still clinging to purpose. Bishop got the generators running. Chen scavenged supplies. Daniels took first watch. Rachel set up a makeshift command table, maps, drives, scraps of intel. The truth was scattered across continents, encrypted under names no one remembered. But piece by piece, she started to rebuild it. Aegis Logistics wasn't the end. It was a shell under a deeper structure, a web of shell companies, political donors, offshore trusts, and covert supply chains. Cross had been one architect among many. The rest were still out there, men and women in suits who had never set foot on a battlefield, yet built empires from its ashes. "They used us," Bishop said quietly, reading her notes over her shoulder. "Ghost units were prototypes, test subjects for the perfect deniable force. Once we proved it worked, they replaced us with private contractors." Rachel nodded, and then erased the prototypes. "Meaning us." "Meaning everyone who ever believed in them." Chen dropped a file on the table. "If we go after this, it's not about survival anymore. It's about legacy." Rachel looked up. "That's the point." She traced a line on the map with her finger, from Oman to Ankara, then to Zurich, then Washington. Each point represented a truth bomb waiting to be detonated. "We hit their comms chain," she said. "Expose the funding routes. Leak their internal directives. We don't fight their soldiers, we fight their silence." Bishop tilted his head. "You're turning this into a ghost war." Rachel gave a small, tired smile. "It already is." That night, as the others slept, she walked outside into the cold desert air. Stars spread above her like shrapnel. The wind carried no sound. She thought about Morrison, still fighting a bureaucratic battle half a world away. About Park, probably sitting in some fluorescent-lit control room, trying to keep her name out of the wrong files. And about Cross, somewhere out there, pulling strings, rewriting the narrative, waiting for her next move. She whispered to the night, "You built your empire on ghosts. Now it's time they come for you." Her breath lingered in the air, then vanished. By morning, they were back to work. Daniels established encrypted comms with allies in Eastern Europe, retired operatives, whistleblowers, digital ghosts who owed favors. Chen created safe channels for data transfer, bouncing packets through a labyrinth of old intelligence networks. Bishop coordinated logistics, quiet and relentless. Rachel watched them work, her chest heavy with something she couldn't name. Pride maybe, or guilt wearing a familiar face. At one point, Chen looked up. "You're thinking about them again." "Always. Doesn't it ever stop hurting?" Rachel shook her head. "If it did, I'd stop being who I am." Chen studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Then don't stop." 3 nights later, they got their first break. A contact in Ankara, former signals analyst, sent an encrypted ping. Cross MOVED funds 2 black channel. Target, Zurich, contact, Valkyrie. Bishop leaned over the monitor. "Valkyrie, that's their European coordinator, handles all ghost reassignments." Rachel nodded. "If we find Valkyrie, we find the network's center." Chen exhaled slowly. "Then Zurich's our next move." Daniels frowned. "That's not a strike, it's a statement. Switzerland's neutral ground if we're caught." "Then we prove ghosts bleed truth, not treason," Rachel said quietly. No one argued after that. The next few days blurred into motion. Falsified passports, untraceable flights, coded routes through the underbelly of international travel. By the time they reached Zurich, the snow was falling, clean, quiet, merciless. The city gleamed beneath its white coat, hiding power behind civility. Rachel rented an old apartment near the financial district. It smelled like dust and old paper, perfect for ghosts. They operated in silence, no chatter, no visible moves. Each day, Rachel walked the same streets, memorizing patrol routes, cameras, blind spots. Each night, they pieced together fragments of intel from Bishop's network. And on the 7th night, Bishop found it. A name buried deep in a trust ledger. Valkyrie Industries. Front company, registered to a single living executive. Rachel's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible." Bishop looked up. "What?" She turned the screen toward him. The registration ID matched an old one, her own. It hit her like a punch. "They're using my identity," she said. "They rebuilt Ghost Unit 13 on paper under my name. Every operation since Syria funded through it." Chen's voice trembled. "They turned you into a phantom, the perfect scapegoat." Rachel stood, the old rage returning, cold, controlled, lethal. "Then it's time to haunt them back." Bishop stared. "What are you thinking?" "We don't expose this from the outside," she said. "We walk straight into the heart of it." He frowned. "You mean Valkyrie's headquarters?" Rachel nodded. "They stole my name, my history, my ghosts. It's time they remember who I really am." The plan took form in silence. Rachel would go in posing as herself, the digital Rachel Cross they'd built. The myth, the weapon, the ghost. Bishop and Chen would handle Overwatch. Daniels would manage extraction. It was reckless, impossible. Exactly the kind of operation that made her who she was. As they finalized the routes, Bishop looked at her one last time. "You sure about this?" She met his gaze. "You can't kill what's already dead, Ethan." He smiled faintly. "Then let's go remind them what they created." That night, Rachel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city hum below. Her reflection in the window looked like someone else, a woman built of steel and scars. A ghost still pretending to be human. She whispered to the dark, "If I don't make it, make sure they remember why we started." But something inside her, something small and stubborn, still believed she would. Because ghosts might fade, but legends linger. And Rachel Cross was done fadding. What do you say to the man who turned your name into a weapon? Zurich at night gleamed like a cathedral built for money. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes, muting the noise of the city until even the wind sounded cautious. Rachel stood across from the Valkyrie Industries Tower, 40 stories of glass and lies, its logo glowing faintly blue against the sky. The same logo she'd seen on the mission patch that day in Syria. The serpent eating its own tail. Her mark. She adjusted the comm in her ear. Bishop status. Overwatch online, his voice replied. You've got a 5-minute window before their internal security cycles. After that, you're on your own. Wouldn't have it any other way. She stepped into the street. Snow crunched under her boots, slow, deliberate, certain. Every step felt heavier than the last, but she kept moving. Because ghosts don't stop when the living look away. The lobby was empty, except for the echo of her footsteps, and a single security guard behind a marble desk. He looked up startled. Miss, the building's closed. Rachel laid a forged access card on the counter. Rachel Cross, director's expecting me. The guard's confusion flickered to unease, then obedience. Of course, ma'am. He swiped the card. The elevator doors slid open. As she stepped inside, her reflection in the mirrored walls stared back pale, composed, eyes carved from resolve. The elevator began to rise. Floor numbers blinked upward like a countdown. In her ear, Bishop's voice. Security grids reinitializing. You've got 4 minutes. Cross's office is top floor. Copy, she murmured. Rachel, Bishop added quietly. Don't underestimate him. She almost smiled. That's what he did to me. The doors opened into silence. No guards, no assistants, just a long hallway lined with glass and light. At the far end, a set of double doors waited, oak and steel, heavy with authority. She walked toward them, each step echoing softly like a drumbeat of ghosts. When she reached the doors, they opened before she touched them. Nathan Cross stood behind his desk, perfectly framed by the city lights. He looked almost regal, the kind of man who thought he'd outlived judgment. Rachel, he said, voice smooth as oil, I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me. I tried, she said. He gestured toward the seat across from him. Please, let's not pretend this isn't inevitable. She didn't sit. I've seen your files, she said, all of them. The shell networks, the payoffs, the ghost units you erased. He smiled faintly. I was building order out of chaos. You of all people should appreciate that. You built coffins, she said. Semantics. Rachel's voice didn't rise, but her words cut deeper for it. You turned us into assets, disposable, replaceable. We were soldiers, not signatures. He tilted his head, amused. And yet here you are, the only one who ever mattered. You mean the one you couldn't kill? For the first time, his smile faltered. Behind the calm facade, Cross moved closer, slow, deliberate. Do you really think this ends with me? He asked. You leak my files, expose my people, destroy my name, and then what? Another man steps in. Another machine starts turning. You'll never stop it. I don't need to stop it, Rachel said quietly. I just need to make sure the world sees it. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Idealism doesn't age well, Rachel. The world doesn't want truth, it wants stories. Then I'll give them one they can't forget. Cross stepped closer, studying her face. You really believe that, don't you? That ghosts can change the world? Rachel met his eyes. We already did. His gaze dropped to her wrist, where the serpent tattoo coiled beneath her sleeve. I created you, he said softly. Everything you are, the discipline, the instinct, the rage. You're my masterpiece. She shook her head. You mistook survival for loyalty. And before he could react, She pressed a small drive onto the table, the same black capsule she'd carried since Oman. "What's that?" he asked. "Everything you tried to erase. Every name, every operation, and this time it's not leaking quietly." His eyes flickered. "You wouldn't." Rachel pressed the activation switch on her comm. "Bishop, send it." "Are you sure?" came his voice. "Yes." Cross lunged for the drive. Rachel moved faster. A quick twist, wrist against wrist, the same training he once given her. He hit the edge of the desk hard, groaning. On the building screens, data began streaming, encrypted files bursting open like veins. Ghost Unit 13, Operation Blackwater, the cover-ups, the accounts, the orders signed by Cross himself. "What did you do?" he hissed. "I gave them their names back." The lights flickered, alarms began to sound. Rachel stepped back, watching the city outside come alive with sirens. Cross stumbled to his feet, fury twisting his face. "You think this redeems you? You'll be hunted for this." She turned toward the elevator. "I've been hunted before." "Rachel," he shouted after her, "you'll die for this." She paused at the doorway, her silhouette framed in red emergency light. "No," she said softly, "I already did." And then she was gone. The building burned behind her. Fire crews would arrive too late. The data was already spreading, mirrored across networks, impossible to contain. The ghosts were free. Rachel walked through the snow, blending into the panicked crowd outside. The air smelled of smoke and ozone, and something that felt like closure. Bishop's voice came faintly through the comm. "It's done. The leak's global. Cross's entire network is crashing. Every account, every alias." "Good," she said quietly. "What about you?" She hesitated. "Tell Morrison, tell him it's over." "Where are you going?" She looked at the flames climbing the tower. "To find peace, or what's left of it." Then she removed the earpiece, crushed it under her heel, and walked away. Days passed. Then weeks. The world called it the Valkyrie leak. Governments denied, corporations panicked. Anonymous soldiers were named, medals awarded, histories rewritten. Some called Rachel Cross a whistleblower, others called her a traitor. Neither was wrong. Somewhere in the Swiss Alps, in a small mountain town, a woman rented a room overlooking the valley. She lived quietly, no weapons, no aliases, just a name she'd finally stopped running from. Rachel Cross. In the mornings she hiked. In the evenings she wrote, not reports, not debriefs, just names. Sarah, Maya, Jessica, Ashley, Diana, Catherine. 7 stars. 6 fallen. 1 still shining. Sometimes she would see a news headline about reforms in military oversight, or a hearing investigating covert funding, and she'd smile faintly. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had shifted. Even ghosts could move mountains if they whispered long enough. One night, as the wind rattled the windows, a single envelope slid beneath her door. No return address. Inside, a photograph, Bishop, Chen, and Daniels, standing outside a nameless building somewhere warm. Alive, smiling. On the back, a note in Bishop's handwriting. "We found them, all 43. Someone had come home." Rachel sat there for a long time, staring at the photo. Then she stood, walked to the window, and looked up at the stars. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a ghost. Just a soldier who'd finally done what she promised. She whispered into the night. "For them." And maybe, somewhere in the sound of the wind, in the echo of memory, 6 voices answered back. Because sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It acts. Quietly, completely. And when it does, the world remembers.